Well, hello again. It is me again, the Whiskey Coach, back at you again. Second review in the same night. First time ever you're witnessing history. Congratulations. Teasing. But no, seriously, it is the first time I've ever reviewed two whiskeys. So the last whiskey I did, as you may have just witnessed, was the Crown Royal Salted Caramel. I had to wash my mouth out and drink tons of water and take a little slug of Elmer T. Lee bourbon just to kind of reset my palate, because holy goodness was that thing syrupy and sweet and sugary and caramely and really not salty at all. But neither here nor there. We are back into the Northern Border collection tonight. The beautiful, the highly acclaimed, the sought after Wiser's 35-year Canadian whiskey. J.P. Wiser's, out of the Corby Distillery, north of the border, the oldest distillate that they have ever produced. Have heard some exquisite things about this whiskey. Again, tonight we'll be sampling from a sample bottle, Boston Round, that I was given in a trade recently that I made with a Canadian friend of mine. This stuff, guys, 35 years is a long, long, long time to be sitting in a barrel. Speaking of barrels, they use a mix of refill bourbon casks and virgin oak as well. It's mostly corn. It's a high corn mash. It does have some rye in there as well. Really, really excited for this. This will be the oldest. Let me double check on that fact. I think this will be the oldest whiskey that I will have ever tasted, and you'll be watching that with me right now. Until maybe tomorrow or the next day when we try the CC 40, and I almost just opened this, so I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, beautiful bottle. Like I said, when I kind of teased this a couple days ago, the Wiser bottles are just monsters. They are beasts. Let's dig right into this, shall we? Using a more traditional whiskey glass here. A snifter instead of the Crown Royal Highball. Ooh, that is interesting. Not what you would get from an older bourbon, at least I imagine. Again, I've never tried a whiskey this old. Delicate. Very delicate for a 35-year-old whiskey. It reminds me more of like almost, not Scotchy, but almost like an Irish whiskey. You know, fruity, floral, hoppiness almost, grainy, much, much lighter than I would expect on the nose at least. And by the way, also, it doesn't look as dark as you would maybe think. Again, they're using, a lot of refilled bourbon casks, so you're not going to get as much wood influence in the color. But still, for 35 years old, it's moderately colored, I would say. Back to the nose. Just delicate, soft, spicy, floral, peppery, ton of things going on here. Makes me very, very curious to how this is going to translate into the mouth. I can't wait any longer. Oh, by the way, I can't wait a little longer. I mentioned how the Crown Royal Salted Caramel has kind of screwed my palate up. That is one of many, 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 many ways that whiskey tasting can be very much influenced and impacted by environmental factors. From what you just tasted, from the meal that you had, from the temperature of the whiskey, to the cologne on the guy next to you. 1.5 million things can affect how you sense and how you taste whiskeys. So please remember that if you ever have a whiskey that you're maybe heard great things about, you thought you'd love, you maybe didn't like as much as you thought, or vice versa, you loved and you're kind of surprised, go back to it a time or two or three, just to make sure that that was, as close as I guess consistent is what you expected from that whiskey, because there are so many things that can affect whiskeys that I try to go back to them multiple times to make sure that, yeah, that's pretty much what I got that first time, because oftentimes it will change. And, you know, some of that could be oxygenation and other things, but boy, it's almost impossible to predict and kind of put in a vacuum, because there's, again, so many factors. Off my soapbox, back to the Weiser's 35. All right, guys, I'm gonna dig in here. Try to enjoy that. 50% alcohol, by the way. Didn't mention that. I'm fearing that I didn't quite. I think I did. I was going to say I was fearing I maybe quite didn't cleanse that palate as good as I even should have. I'm getting almost like, man, so many things. It's hard to really put a finger on it. Like cranberry almost. Like a tartness. But also, I am getting the rye. I feel like I'm getting the rye, the liveliness, the brightness, the pumpernickel, you know, the rye bread. But I'm also getting these really like zesty, dark fruits that have a little bit of like acidity, not citrus fruits, more like I said, raspberries, and I guess like maybe like a pomegranate kind of thing. Let me try that again. Cleanse my palate out again. So, Don Livermore is a master distiller, master blender at Corby's. You know, a legend in the Canadian whiskey game. You know, and he kind of really put his stamp and put his signature on this. Gavin de Gorgamo, a name that I very much appreciate, a Canadian whiskey connoisseur, reviewer, author, highly respected person in the Canadian whiskey world. Heard him on a podcast recently discuss this whiskey, and he raved about how beautiful of a whiskey this was. As you can see, I'm trying to reserve my judgment here. Ooh. That sip was so much better. Isn't that crazy how that can happen? That sip reminded me of a pour that I had of the Four Roses Al Young 50th anniversary bottle. Which, by the way, I thought was absolutely incredible. That's what that sip reminded me of a little bit. That's why you taste it multiple times, because your palate doesn't really get a good grasp until you've tasted things a handful of times. Going back in one more time. It isn't as robust, and it doesn't stick with me long, or I guess as long as I would have expected for a whiskey that is 35 years old. It's got a mid palate on it. It's got a finish, but it is a light experience, generally speaking, I would say. It's enjoyable. I'm not one of these guys that's going to try to throw 45 flavors that I'm getting at you. I threw probably 5 to 10 at you, and really that's about what I'm getting. I will give Wiser's, JP Wiser's 35-year-old Canadian whiskey, a 7.9. I was debating between like 8.1, 7.9. I'm going to give it a 7.9. I really like it. I may be a little guilty of setting the bar just this much too high, which is on me. You know, I read a lot about it. Like I said, heard podcasts about it. It's a 35-year-old whiskey. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. I really like it. I don't know if it quite hit my expectations. So, for what that's worth. By the way, price-wise on this, guys, you're looking at $164.95 in Ontario. I don't know if it's sold all over the country in other provinces or just Ontario, but that's what you're going to pay for it. By the way, that is an incredible value when you're talking about a 35-year-old whiskey with the amount of angel share that you're getting even north of the border. Extremely complicated, complex, delicate, finely crafted whiskey. I just didn't think it was supreme or superior or mind-blowing. It was very, very good. That's why I gave it a very good score. But if I'm comparing Northern Border collections, I've only done 2 now. I actually personally prefer the Lot 40 12-year cask strength. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, you witnessed Whiskey Coach history, 2 reviews in the same night. That was fun. Very fun. I'm really excited to have checked this off of a whiskeys that I've tasted list. I have plenty more to go, including the last 2 of the Northern Border collection, the Gooderham Award 17-year-old, the Pike Creek 21-year-old, aged in Speyside casks, as well as the Canadian Club 40-year-old, speaking of Canadians. And I also am going to be doing upcoming the Rebel Year 10-year versus the standard Rebel Yellow. And that was per request by Bobby at the liquor store here locally as well. So I wanted to make sure I got that review knocked out at some point too. So thanks again for watching, guys. Love being back. So very fun. Fun experience tonight. 35-year-old whiskey. That was pretty cool. So until next time, and as I always say, glasses up. See you soon.